It is Book Review Sunday, and the two books that I am reviewing today are both fated mate romances. Book number one is called The Nameless Luna by Hope Dwinell, and the title of the book gives away the clue of what we're dealing with here. Luna goes along with the female leader of a wolf pack. So this is a werewolf fated mate romance. So the main premise of this story is that our main female character has literally no name. Her mom died a week after she was born, forcing her onto her uncle to be raised. And her uncle had some issues with her birth and with his sister. And so he refused to name her and raised her as a slave in his household and allowed the rest of the pack to beat her up and abuse her. So the story starts when she is an adult. So she's been a slave the rest of her, most of her life. And her cousin, who is the pack's future alpha, is celebrating his mating ceremony with his mate. And the ceremony is interrupted by the arrival of the alpha of another pack, who is considered the rogue alpha king. And his name is Tristan, and he arrives and says that he received a vision, not his vision, but kind of the pack seer received the vision and told him about it, that his mate is in this pack and he has come to find her. So his mate is our main character, the pack slave who has no name, and he takes her with him back to his pack. And Tristan has reservations about the mate bond because of his own parents' past, which I won't dive into. I'm going to encourage you to read the book. And so he doesn't trust the mate bond and he doesn't believe in mates. The whole reason why he took this nameless girl is because the pack seer said that if he accepted her as his mate, then she would save the pack. And so that's the sole reason why he's brought her back with him. She doesn't not believe in the mate bond. She just never believed that she would have a mate, or if she did, that her mate wouldn't accept her because she grew up being unloved and abused. And she picks up a nickname within the pack. Everyone calls her Flower or Little Flower. And as Tristan and Little Flower get to know each other and start to accept the mate bond, Little Flower's true past is going to show up. And it turns out that she is more than just a werewolf. And that's one of the reasons why her uncle raised her in hate. And so now Tristan's going to have the choice to accept her true past and carve a better future for beings like her. So let's go into my review. I give The Nameless Luna 4 stars. Now, one of the top things that even led me to finishing this book in the first place is that she is rescued rather quickly. This idea of an abused pack slave being rescued by her mate, who happens to be an alpha, is really popular in these werewolf romance fated mate stories. And it's my least favorite trope in this genre. And So oftentimes I will, as soon as I realize it's that kind of story, I'll stop reading the book because I don't want to spend 20 chapters reading about them getting beat up and thrown around and laughed at and food thrown on them and stuff like that. It's just not really my cup of tea, especially if the her fated mate ends up being one of her abusers. So then he has to have a redemption arc. And so because she gets rescued within the second or third chapter, I was willing to give this story a chance. I also liked that the fated mate bond was a little bit different from other werewolf books that I've read before. Usually there's the ability to reject your mate, and there kind of is in this world, but it's not the same because the moon goddess will curse those who do not accept the mate that she's chosen for them. And the moon goddess herself isn't this benevolent, loving being who is there to take care of her children. Her children are meant to obey her. So when they don't, they get cursed, which is one of the reasons why our main character is the way she is. Her parents disobeyed the moon goddess, and as punishment for their disobedience, their daughter is cursed. And I thought the pacing for the relationship building between Little Flower and Tristan is really great. Oftentimes with these stories, because of the mate bond, they jump into accepting each other super fast, or it drags on and on and on and on if it's a fighting the bond type of story until the very end. And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, I love you. And so the pacing was really great for this. I do wish that Little Flower would have chosen her own name. She stayed Little Flower until the very end when she learns what her um, given name was at birth that her uncle kept from her. And I just think it would have been a really great coming of age, female empowerment type of um, trope or story plot to have her choose her own name about halfway through as she becomes comfortable in her own skin and accepts the life that she's now in. I just would have loved that. And then because the moon goddess is such a powerful being within the actual lives of the characters, with this whole idea of cursing them for disobeying her. I wish we could have spent more time on her when the characters do get to finally meet her. It's very rushed, and it would have been nice to know more with her character development and building, world building for that. But overall, still a great story. I'm glad I read it and I really enjoyed it. The heat level for this romance is sensual. Second story for today is Aliens Babies by Juno Wells and Aurelia Skye. So I have read books by Aurelia Skye before. I am new to Juno Wells with this book. So in recognizing Aurelia's name, I was pretty certain that I would enjoy it. I've enjoyed her other science fiction alien stories. And so this one, I didn't realize till the very end, is actually the second book of a series. So I did end up reading the first book as soon as I finished this one, which I'll review in a couple episodes. So with this, we have a human woman and an alien man or male for the love interest couple. And our human woman is named Jessamynda, and before the story begins, she was kidnapped by a mad scientist in order to use in vitro fertilization to mix her human eggs with alien DNA to create hybrid babies. And the reason why this is happening is because this alien's planet has gone through a terrible war, leaving the population, the female population, very, very low. And while they are repopulating with their own females, there's just not enough to do a true repopulation. And so this scientist is looking for other female species that their DNA would work with their species DNA to mix and create hybrids. And so it turns out humans are one of those species that can mix with these aliens. And the government is not the human government. This alien planet's government is trying to decide the best way to approach this because Earth doesn't know that other life exists yet. And they need to convince Earth women to actually be willing to do this. Well, this scientist doesn't want to wait. And so he just sets up a secret lab on Earth and kidnaps about 400 or 500 women and starts the experimentation process. And Jessamynda, when she is rescued during the medical examination to make sure she's okay, learns that the in vitro fertilization experiment was successful and she is pregnant with twins. Next thing that's going to happen is the alien father of these twins. And I put father in quotations because I guess the way this mad scientist did it is he had stolen this alien's DNA. And so it's not really a sperm to egg in vitro fertilization. He somehow fused the DNA with her eggs to cause a pregnancy. This is science fiction stuff. So anyway, so now Jessamynda and this alien father have to decide if they're going to co-parent. And when they're trying to make that decision, this alien species does have fated mates, and it turns out Jessamynda is his fated mate. And so on top of co-parenting, he now has to convince Jessamynda to actually give him a romantic chance. Now, this is a novella. This isn't a full drawn out novel. And so it's a very short story, but it's still a fun read. So let's go through my review of this one. I give Aliens Babies 3 stars. And as you can see, I actually had this slide set up correctly where stuff is going to pop up as I talk about it. So what I liked, I loved the world building, which I covered in my summary of the book. This dying alien race is in need of repopulation, and it was fun. I've read similar stories before, or at least where the aliens can only make males, so they always have to mate with a female from another species. Stuff like that. I also enjoyed that the characters were diverse. Jessamynda is Indian, and so that was fun to be in the head of a character who's not like me and get to know her culture and her life. I do wish that this story was longer, which would allow for the plot to be fleshed out a bit more. Everything was just very condensed and moved very quickly, which I do acknowledge is the way a novella is supposed to be. And I'm just barely starting to figure that out. I've read a lot of novellas over the past couple of years without realizing that that's what they were, and that the novella is supposed to be fast-paced, and that the characters, especially if it's a romance, are going to get together quickly. They're going to fall in love quickly. They're going to become intimate quickly. And so I am starting to reassess how I rate and review novellas. And so This one probably isn't the most fair assessment because I just barely had my shift in view how I view novellas yesterday. And this review I gave a couple months ago. So I imagine if I'd gone into this book with my new view on novellas, maybe it probably would have gotten 4 stars. But even for a novella, this is on the shorter end. Um, so I still think I would have liked just a few more chapters to just give them a bit more time to really get to know each other and really fall in love. And the heat level for this one is spicy. So if you like fated mate romances, check out The Nameless Luna and Aliens Babies, and I will see you next week.